The forbidden rise of the empire that nearly conquered the world history is written by the victors. But what happens when the most powerful empire almost no one talks about comes dangerously close to conquering the entire known world, only to be buried in silence and secrecy? This is not a legend, it's not fiction, it's a real chapter in humanity's past, one that has been deliberately obscured, edited, or simply erased from most textbooks. This was a civilization with unmatched military innovation, economic might, and cultural influence, so expansive and so dominant that it nearly reshaped the entire geopolitical map of its time. Yet today, it's rarely discussed in mainstream education. Why? What made their rise so forbidden? What forces conspired to keep their story hidden? In today's video, we're going to unveil the shocking truth behind an empire that rose from obscurity, rewrote the rules of power, and came within inches of world domination. This is the forbidden rise of the empire that almost ruled it all. 1. Origins. Shrouded in mystery. The birth of a powerhouse, the roots of this empire stretch back to a time when most of Europe was fragmented, Asia was splintered, and Africa was asserting regional dominance. While history tends to spotlight Rome, China, and Egypt, another force was quietly gaining strength, the Khazar Khaganate. Situated between the Caspian and Black Seas, the Khazars carved out a vast territory across the Caucasus and Eastern Europe. But unlike other empires that expanded through brute conquest alone, the Khazars built a society that mixed diplomacy, trade, and multicultural integration with shocking efficiency. Their cities were multicultural hubs, home to Muslims, Christians, Jews, and pagans, all coexisting under a secular ruling elite. It was this adaptability, this openness to diversity that allowed the empire to grow rapidly and form alliances that baffled its enemies. But their greatest secret wasn't their military, it was what they believed and who they chose to become. 2. The conversion that changed everything, a strategic faith. In a move that stunned their contemporaries, the Khazar elite converted to Judaism around the 8th century. While the Christian Byzantine Empire and the Islamic Caliphate vied for dominance, the Khazars chose a third path, embracing a faith that kept them politically neutral but culturally distinct. This wasn't a spiritual decision alone, it was geopolitical brilliance. By refusing to align with either Rome or Baghdad, the Khazars protected their sovereignty and maintained control over vital trade routes connecting East and West. But this conversion also triggered suspicion and hostility. Religious alliances were power alliances, and the Khazars had removed themselves from the chessboard, becoming wild cards in a world of empires. To their enemies, this made them dangerous, to their allies, unpredictable, and to the historians who came later, controversial. Their Jewish identity has since become a focal point for conspiracy theories, suppression, and revisionist history. But the truth may be even more complex and more threatening. 3. Trade empire of the ancient world, the Silk Road, superpower. The Khazars weren't just military tacticians, they were economic masterminds. Controlling major sections of the Silk Road, they taxed every merchant, caravan, and convoy that passed through their lands. They didn't just accumulate wealth, they became the economic gatekeepers between Asia and Europe. Goods, ideas, currencies, and even religions flowed through Khazar territory, making their cities among the most cosmopolitan in the medieval world. But this economic dominance made them a threat not just to neighboring powers, but to the global balance of power. Empires rise and fall with trade. The Khazars weren't just growing rich, they were shaping global commerce. And for a time, it looked like no one could stop them. But wealth brings envy, and their rivals began plotting. 4. Military might. Hidden in plain sight. The warriors of the steppe. While much of the Khazar strength came from diplomacy and trade, their military was anything but passive. They pioneered cavalry techniques that would later be used by the Mongols, and their armies were a terrifying fusion of nomadic speed and imperial discipline. Equipped with composite bows, heavy armor, and vast knowledge of terrain, Khazar warriors could appear out of nowhere, strike with deadly precision, and vanish before an enemy even knew what hit them. They formed alliances with Viking mercenaries, Slavic infantry, and even Byzantine fleets. Their military doctrine was not just about expansion, it was about control, dominance, and deterrence. Enemies feared them, allies respected them, and despite being surrounded by colossal empires, the Khazars held their ground for centuries. But it wasn't brute force that finally broke them. It was isolation, betrayal, and an erasure so calculated that even modern scholars struggle to piece it all together. 5. A legacy erased. The vanishing of a superpower. By the 10th century, the tides began to turn. A rising power from the north, the Rus, saw the Khazar dominance as a threat. Backed by shifting trade routes and new religious alignments, the Rus launched devastating campaigns that crippled Khazar strongholds. Simultaneously, pressure from the east by Turkic tribes and from the south by the Abbasids created a multi-front squeeze. The Khazar Empire began to fracture. But what followed wasn't just military defeat, it was historical deletion. Their cities disappeared from maps, their libraries were destroyed, their diplomatic records were lost or intentionally buried, and worst of all, their very identity became the subject of misinformation and erasure. Some say the Khazars became the ancestors of modern Ashkenazi Jews. Others say they vanished into obscurity. But why would such a dominant force be so thoroughly wiped from the historical record? Who stood to gain from their silence? 6. Theories, secrets, and forbidden history. Today, the story of the Khazar Empire is surrounded by controversy. Some scholars argue their influence is overstated, others say it's been deliberately understated. Conspiracy theorists have twisted their legacy into grotesque myths, weaponizing their memory for modern political agendas. But the real question isn't about genetics, religion, or territory. It's about why a civilization so powerful, so unique, and so sophisticated could simply vanish from the mainstream historical narrative. What else has been hidden from us? What secrets lie beneath the ruins along the Caspian shore? Satellite imagery has revealed forgotten cities. Linguistic traces have appeared in places once thought unrelated. Every clue points to a truth more shocking than fiction, that the Khazars weren't just another lost tribe. They were a rising global power, one that came a little too close to changing the world order. 7. Could it happen again? The echoes of the Khazar rise history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. The Khazar story isn't just about the past. It's a warning about the present. How easily can power be erased? How quickly can a dominant force be turned into myth? Today's geopolitical alliances, religious tensions, and information wars all echo the dynamics that once surrounded the Khazars. As empires rise in the east and alliances shift in the west, we're reminded that dominance is temporary, but erasure can be permanent. The lesson is clear: when knowledge is suppressed, power becomes invisible, and invisible power is the most dangerous kind. The Khazars remind us that history is not just what happened, it is what we are allowed to remember. And somewhere out there, hidden in forgotten ruins or guarded archives, their full story is still waiting to be told. So now that you've seen the rise and erasure of the empire that nearly ruled the world, what do you think really happened? Was it historical coincidence? Or was this empire's silence part of a larger, deliberate effort to control the narrative? Leave your theories in the comments below. I read every one of them. And if you want more forbidden history, lost empires, and hidden truths, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss what they don't want you to know. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and keep digging, because the most powerful empires are often the ones erased from memory